two elderly men bought a lion from the zoo, intending to hunt it. But when their nephew opened the crate, expecting a fierce struggle, the lion neither roared nor resisted. It just lay there listlessly, not even bothering to look at them.
Get your lion butt out of there.
Looks awful tame.
Clearly, this was a substandard animal discarded by the zoo. The two men instantly lost their desire to hunt. Unexpectedly, their nephew said he wanted to adopt it. So, with their permission, Walt had his first pet. Yet just a few days earlier, Walt had been a complete stranger to the two old men. His mother, using a distant family connection, explained that these were his distant uncles. Rumors said they had disappeared for 40 years and returned fabulously wealthy, hiding millions in cash. Since the uncles had no children to inherit, Walt's mission was to win their favor over the summer and find out where the money was hidden. But stepping out of the car, Walt was stunned. What kind of wealthy people lived in such a rundown house? And then, many small animals rushed out, nipping at his pants legs. Clearly, he wasn't welcome. His mother, however, was shamelessly persistent. She found the uncles fishing, ignored everyone's objections, left Walt there, and drove away. The two uncles looked like gang enforcers. Walt huddled fearfully to the side. They all sat silently by the doorstep. Just then, a car approached in the distance. It was a man who knew the old men were rich, coming to pitch an investment opportunity. But the uncles wouldn't listen, immediately grabbing their shotguns and opening fire. The man sped away in terror. Now Walt understood their daily entertainment. For the rest of the afternoon, countless salesmen showed up, each trying to sell something, but without exception, they were scared off by gunfire. By evening, the yard was finally quiet. That night, Walt was assigned to sleep in the attic. Summoning his courage, he climbed up. The dusty, worn-out attic was full of grime, but Walt found a key and a wooden box. Could the money be inside? He opened the box to find a photograph of a woman. Even though the frame was old and yellowed, it couldn't hide her beauty. Then he heard noise outside. The older uncle was outside in his pajamas. Walt followed him and saw him under the moonlight, wielding a plunger like a weapon. He was sleepwalking, engaged in a fierce imaginary battle, leaving the animal spectators stunned. By the time Walt snapped out of it, it was morning, and the older uncle was gone. After breakfast, more so-called relatives showed up, hoping for an inheritance. Naturally, they saw Walt as competition. That evening, the relatives called Walt a burden, and suggested sending him to an orphanage. Walt overheard them, kicked one of them hard, then ran miles to a phone booth to call his mother at work, but he was told she didn't work there. This wasn't the first time his mother had abandoned him. The uncles didn't say much, just asked Walt what he planned to do next. Walt pointed to a map, deciding to head south, back to the orphanage where he belonged.
I've been to the orphan home before. I don't want to go back.
This touched the uncles' hearts. The younger uncle explained. They hated these greedy relatives. If Walt stayed a while, the relatives would leave them in peace. So Walt stayed. The next day, another salesman arrived, but he waved a white flag the moment he stepped out of his car. He knew the brothers' reputation. This intrigued Walt, who suggested hearing the man's pitch. Surprisingly, the uncles agreed. A well-prepared salesman never disappoints. He was selling the latest flying disc launcher. A simple pull of the lever sent discs flying, requiring skill to shoot them down. It was the perfect toy for the brothers, who bought it on the spot at a high price. The relatives fled, afraid of getting shot. That night, Walt saw the older uncle sleepwalking again. He tried to wake him, but the younger uncle stopped him, warning it was dangerous. Despite his age, the older uncle was still strong and agile. He was searching for a woman named Jasmine in his dreams. With the mood set, the younger uncle continued the story. That began in the summer of 1914. They were traveling in Europe, but were drugged and kidnapped, waking up on a warship headed for North Africa. They were forced into the French army, and fought many hard battles in North Africa. By luck, they survived the war. Afterward, the younger uncle stayed in Africa, exploring and writing, while the older uncle remained in the military, fighting local warlords. Just as the story reached a climax, the older uncle woke up, and sharply sent them back to bed. Though the story was unfinished, Walt believed the woman in the photo was Jasmine. Guided by Walt, the brothers started buying things that interested them, including a batch of vegetable seeds, so they could enjoy homegrown produce. But not all salesmen were honest. When the seeds sprouted, they realized they'd all been sold corn seeds, just in different packages. Later, the brothers even bought a lion. Walt named her Jasmine, a clear hint. The older uncle was furious.
What'd you just say?
But forgot about it by the next day, enthusiastically taking them to buy feed. He single-handedly loaded the entire truck with heavy sacks, then collapsed, exhausted. Bored in the hospital hallway, the younger uncle resumed the story. During one of the older uncle's many missions, he rescued a princess's handmaid. The handmaid told the princess of his bravery. No one could resist the charm of a knight in shining armor. One day, while the older uncle was riding along the beach, a black horse raced alongside him. Known as the best rider in North Africa, he couldn't allow anyone to beat him. The silent race ended with both riders colliding. The older uncle sprang up, ready to fight, but was stunned. The rider was Princess Jasmine herself. Though it seemed like a fairy tale, they fell in love at first sight. However, a neighboring chieftain had already arranged to marry Jasmine. To prevent her escape, he imprisoned her in his country. Upon hearing this, the older uncle launched a rescue, defeated 20 guards, and saved the princess at the last moment. They lived happily together after that.
But wait, if they lived happily ever after, then they got married and she'd be here right now with us, right?
The older uncle, now old and stubborn, still believed he was young and strong, quite different from the man in the story. Walt began to doubt its truth. But one day at mealtime, 4 troublemakers showed up. The older uncle grabbed one by the throat and said,
Hug McCain. I fought in 2 world wars and countless smaller ones on 3 continents. I led thousands of men into battle with everything from horses and swords to artillery and tanks. I've won and lost a dozen fortunes, killed many men.
Walt was amazed. The troublemakers pulled weapons, but even 4 against 1, they were no match for the older uncle. Perhaps the story wasn't an exaggeration. Maybe he really could defeat 20 men in his youth. The older uncle confiscated their car and drove home, only to find the relatives waiting, claiming the lion was going to eat someone. Walt realized he'd forgotten to feed Jasmine. The cage was empty. The relatives' kids had vandalized it, freeing Jasmine. Everyone grabbed shotguns for a hunt, but it ended safely. Jasmine didn't attack Walt. Instead, she lay down meekly and nuzzled him. Everyone relaxed, except the relatives, who insisted they wouldn't visit again unless the lion was gone. Hearing this, the uncles immediately granted Jasmine permanent residency. The relatives left in defeat, and Jasmine stayed in the cornfield, the most jungle-like place around. After dinner, the older uncle lectured the troublemakers. Perhaps all old people become like this. The younger uncle said if the older uncle lived long enough, he'd give Walt a lecture too. Then he continued the story. The older uncle and Jasmine shared the best years of their lives, but the chieftain wouldn't give up, offering a bounty for the older uncle's head. Assassins flocked to the task, forcing the couple to live in constant vigilance, unable to live normally. Though highly skilled, the older uncle knew his luck would run out, so the younger uncle posed as a masked assassin, captured the older uncle, collected the reward, then took care of the guards on the way to the cell. The older uncle sneaked into the chieftain's room, threw him a knife for a fair fight, and soundly defeated him. Surprisingly, the older uncle spared the chieftain. Perhaps impressed by his honor, the chieftain called off all further assassination attempts, but the story never revealed Jasmine's fate. The younger uncle said Walt should ask the older uncle himself, so the next time the older uncle sleepwalked, Walt carefully woke him. Fortunately, he wasn't too angry. Walt mustered the courage to ask what happened to Jasmine. The older uncle turned away, silent for a long time, before finally saying,
She died. Died in childbirth, hurting the baby.
The answer bewildered Walt. After Jasmine died, the heartbroken older uncle lost his purpose and returned to the army, serving until he was too old, then coming here. Young Walt, used to his mother's lies, so he doubted the story's truth. If that was the ending, he'd rather believe the younger uncle's tales were false.
Sometimes, the things that may or may not be true are the things that a man needs to believe in the most. It doesn't matter if it's true or not, you see. Those are the things worth believing in.
Tears welled in Walt's eyes. He told his uncle he must live on, to teach him life lessons like he did others. They made a promise to each other. Under the bright moon, 2 hearts warmed. But that night, as Walt prepared for bed, he saw the younger uncle heading to the barn. Walt followed, and watched him crawl under the barn, emerging with bundles of cash. After the younger uncle left, Walt was shocked. His mother was right. The uncles really had hidden cash. Walt was torn, especially since many said the money was stolen. Late that night, his mother returned with her new boyfriend, a detective. The man claimed the uncle's money was stolen. Walt retold the stories of his uncles in response to this, but his mother and the detective twisted his words. When asked where the money was hidden, Walt instinctively glanced toward the barn. The detective noticed, dragged Walt into the barn, punched him, and demanded the exact location. Walt chose to trust his uncles, and refused to talk. He was beaten badly on the ground. His cries for help reached Jasmine, who charged out and pinned the detective down. By the time the uncles arrived, the detective was mauled but alive, while Jasmine, too old and overexerted, had died. Walt's first pet was gone.
You die with the boots on, that's the main thing.
Taking her cup.
They buried Jasmine in the cornfield. Dressed in a suit, Walt seemed mature beyond his years. He'd grown a lot that summer. It was time to say goodbye. Walt didn't know how to express his feelings. Those who deeply influence us often come and go quickly. Hard to meet again after parting. On the car ride, learning his mother would stay with the detective, Walt didn't hesitate. He jumped out of the car. Meanwhile, the uncles were waiting for salesmen at the door, but upon seeing Walt, they lowered their shotguns in unison. Walt smiled. No words were needed. The younger uncle simply said,
Welcome home.
Life for the 2 old men and the boy wasn't over, for they exist in our very lives.